Welcome, everybody. We're here for a public hearing. Heidi, can you pull that up, that long, and I'll read the notice. Notice is hereby given by the town board of the town of Canton that pursuant to the provisions of the town law of the state of New York, a public hearing will be held at 6 p.m. on the 29th of November, 2022 at the Canton Town Hall, 60 Main Street, Canton, New York, and via Zoom, to consider the adoption of a local law entitled Local Law to opt out of the exemption from taxation for certain energy systems under Real Property Tax Law 487. The purpose of such law is to opt out of the exemption from taxation for certain energy systems pursuant to section 487 of the Real Property Tax Law of the state of New York. A complete copy of the draft law has been available for public inspection. So notice is hereby given that all interested parties will be given an opportunity to be heard. Before we ask for comment, we do have Bill Buchanan on the Zoom, and I'm going to ask that he describe what the 487 is.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mary Ann, for allowing me to speak. So real property tax law is the New York state law that addresses how real estate should be taxed. In 1977, the New York State Legislature added this provision of 487. And it provides a 15-year real property tax exemption for a wide variety of renewable energy systems. Essentially, it's an incentive to adopt renewable energy. If you were to add, say, a solar system to your home, it would not increase the taxable status of your home. One of the features of the law is that you, as a local government or a taxing authority, may take no action and allow the exemption to go forward, or you may opt out. Tonight, we're considering taking an action to opt out. In Canton, the town chose to allow the exemption, and it has been successful. It encouraged a lot of residential solar, and that was beneficial for a long period of time. In 2016, there were some very significant changes to the law that governs renewable energy. There were two things that came into being: net metering, which allows you to send power back into the grid if you generate it at your home and you don't use it, and to get a credit for that. And at the same time, the Public Service Commission enacted a new program called Community Solar. The idea behind community solar is, if I have a home that doesn't allow me to put solar on the roof or a windmill out back, maybe I have trees, maybe I live in an apartment or in a dormitory, what have you. They allowed community solar, which provides an opportunity for everyone to be able to buy green power through their power bill. So in Canton today, we have 7 such projects that are going on, where a developer builds a solar system, and any of us can determine to buy the power from that community solar system. So 2016 was a pivotal year for renewable energy. In 2019, a whole new package of laws came into being. Canton passed its solar law, which is intended to regulate development. And there was the state legislature passed the Climate Act, which set very distinctive goals for adoption of renewable energy. Probably the most important of which is that they hope to develop 6,000 megawatts of solar by 2025. So 3 years from now, state is looking for 6,000 megawatts of solar. And one of the ways that they intend that to happen is by streamlining large-scale renewable energy development through a new law and a new agency called ORES, the Office of Renewable Energy And that program has spawned yet another project in Canton, the Rich Road project. Tonight, the town board is considering whether or not it wants to continue the exemption and to determine whether or not opting out would be in the best interests of the community moving forward. A couple of things to know. Any systems that are currently interconnected to the grid would remain tax exempt under 487 under the existing exemption. This would only impact new systems that are not interconnected as of the date that this law is passed and filed. So in summary, we're looking forward at the pace of energy development and what's been happening in the town. And we've determined that we should consider whether or not these new systems should be taxable or not. And this law would provide the town with the ability to render those new systems taxable. So in a nutshell, that's what's before the board this evening.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that.
Can I ask one?
Just say- So what I'm going to do is open up the public hearing so that we can listen. And I ask that you come to the podium, identify yourself, and we're here to listen. So is there any public comment? Okay.
My name is Rainbow Crabtree. I live on Pink Schoolhouse Road in Canton. And I just had one question with regard to what was just presented. That the new law would only affect new systems. Is that just systems that haven't yet started building or not yet been approved?
New systems that are not interconnected. So interconnected means attached to the grid so that the power goes out during the day and comes back in when the sun doesn't shine. So interconnected, which is a formal agreement between the developer and the utility, the host of the system.
Brooke Rouse, 8 College Street. I also just have a question about opting out. So is it all or nothing? Can you opt out of different scaled projects too? I'm just thinking the idea is to continue to support hopefully what's been successful here, but to manage what the community wants. So is it all or nothing, or can you choose to opt out with certain exceptions based on scale or residential versus commercial or whatever the community might want?
It's all or nothing.
This is Maureen at 68 or Summit Road. So my understanding is opting out, especially for larger scales, means more tax revenue than what we would get based on. My discussion today with an attorney told me that that used to be a really good play, except for these larger scales that are have to do with the state will come in and assess the land. So you're going to get screwed. I mean, pretty much, because the state's going to come in and assess the land much lower than you're going to assess it by the town will assess it. So have you guys thought about a host community agreement where it's something that you can control as the town? And if you would look at towns, Byron and Ripley, they have solar farms about the size of what is proposed for the Rich Road. And they are going to be getting $1 million a year with a 2 to 3% tax increase every year after that. So if you guys really want to look at what's best for the community, I can understand wanting to opt out. But if you're talking about larger state issues, the state's gonna come in and it's gonna assess land. So a host community agreement is something that came up, and I mean, $1 million a year with a 2 to 3% tax increase after that, I think would probably be a lot better than tax the land depreciating through time, which is going to. So as far as a lot of developers are going around and talking about the pilot program and saying that, you know, you don't need to worry about the pilot program. Obviously, it's just big business. And I also have a question about when it comes to the pilot, do you guys control it or is it the IDA? Like, I'm not sure who is going to be the one that's going to say, hey, this is what we're going to be asking for if you guys don't opt out of this. And if you guys have worked with the IDA before when it comes to larger scales like this, or if this is all new. And as far as something personally, I understand this is all new to us, and I understand this is new to you guys too, and it can be very overwhelming. So I don't, I mean, I definitely understand that the shoes that you're in, so thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bill, can you respond to that person?
Yes, thank you for the thoughtful question. The town, when it adopted its solar law, put in a requirement for a host community benefit agreement as a condition. So this action to opt out would act in concert with the host community benefit agreement. And those negotiations with all of the developers who are seeking to work in Canton are ongoing as we speak. So your comment is well taken. Town is working very hard to try to perfect those agreements and to deliver as much revenue as possible under the circumstances. And we believe that opting out would assist us in those negotiations, and it's a principal driver for this decision.
Will you please respond about the IDA and the pilot?
Yes. There is a state statute that empowers the IDA to negotiate on behalf of the local taxing jurisdictions. That would include the town of Canton, the school district, in which Canton sits, and the county. So the IDA has a set of special powers granted by statute to create a tax exempt structure. It has a number of different financial levers that it can use, including payment in lieu of taxes, tax abatements for sales tax, and a number of other things. So there are pilot negotiations ongoing, as well as host community benefit agreement negotiations ongoing for all of these projects, all of which are geared towards delivering revenues to the town as a result of this development.
Thank you, Bill. Any other comments?
Clark Cummings, 86 Riverside Drive. Just trying to understand something. So as you're talking about this, about opting in or out, what is your position on the overall project itself? I mean, are you guys for it? Is the town for it or against the project?
Which project are you speaking?
Talking about the Rich Road Solar Project.
Okay.
I mean, because it sounds like if you're talking about this, about opting out of the pilot, they're like, all right, well, maybe we're for this, but we're going to try to barter the best deal we can. So just curious about that. Also, something else that I read, I was just trying to find it in an email thread about, I think, Lewis County or something like that, where a developer would come in and then after a couple of years actually tried to get is more of a tax break on the pilot program, tried to back out of it and try to get their taxes reduced by like 97% or something like that. So, I mean, because they're going to get a lot of tax breaks anyway from New York State with their relationship with New York State, which is going to be different than their relationship with us, correct? So, opt out.
Other comments?
I'm Paula Jensen Moulton. I'm at 965 Minor Street Road. And I don't know how much exactly this pertains to the taxation, but I think it does, the differentiation between commercial and residential. I know, for example, our church is I'm treasurer for our church, and it's in a commercial district. So for the phones, we have to pay extra for internet, etc. So this obviously is going to be a commercial project if it goes through, I would assume. But my question is, how much are we really going to, is this project really going to generate as far as energy? One of the things I've just done the last few weeks, I have family that lives downstate. And so I always look at the weather. And for example, if you look in Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, anywhere downstate, take out your phone, the next 9 days are 4 days of partial sun and 1 day of full sun. If you look at Canton, it's 2 days of partial sun. So it's 50% more effective to have it closer. And just the whole idea of distributive justice, that it should be fair. We should be looking for the most for our buck. And I know the company is just looking for the money, but are we really generating the amount of energy that the company says we are? So I don't know how that really relates to this issue, and I'm sorry if it doesn't, but it's something I've been thinking about and talking about with my own family that's down there. So.
Other comments?
Barbara Rogers. I live at 989 Minor Street Road. And please, I have a question, and pardon my ignorance if everyone else knows the answer to this but me. But if we're considering making solar panels taxable, as in adding it to property value, can we then choose between payment in lieu of taxes and elevated property value with solar panels added on? In other words, would the town receive a lot more money? And who would pay those property taxes on a commercial solar project? Would it be the landowner who has leased the property to a builder? Or would it be the company who has actually built the solar installation on top of the land? And would it take payment in lieu of taxes right off the table and just go to straight property taxes? So I would appreciate if you could clarify that for me. Thank you.
Let me respond to that. The typical structure between a landowner and a solar developer involves a lease. So the landowner leases property to the developer to build the solar system. In that lease agreement, the solar company agrees to pay the increase in taxes associated with the development of the energy project. So there is a division between what the landowner typically paid and what the increased value is because of the solar system. So the exemption that exists today essentially eliminates the tax on the solar system. Opting out will create a tax on the solar system, which the solar developer, owner of the system, will have to pay. So I hope that answers your question as to who pays for what. So landowners are very well advised to scrutinize those taxation provisions in their leases, because it's very important that those things are clear and those responsibilities are divided appropriately.
Yeah, something to go on top of that, Clark, again, is can they get taxed only on what it produces? So I read something recently about like they try to work out a deal or do something where it's not just a blanket tax of this rate. They only get taxed on whatever the solar field produces. I don't know if you know anything about that or if that's true or false.
Bill, can you speak to the status of the assessment situation, the state assessment of these projects?
Yeah, because thank you, Bob. That's the answer to the question. How will the local assessor create a taxable value for the solar system? And there are a couple of different models for that. Let me use something simpler as an example. So an apartment building. You can be taxed on the revenue that the apartment building generates, or you can be taxed based on the value of that apartment building vis-a-vis the other apartment buildings in the taxing jurisdiction. So the assessors typically have methods that they can apply. Today, there have been some models published by the New York State Tax Department that would use revenue as a way to generate what the taxable value is. Unfortunately, the rules that exist today are not effective because of a court case that took issue with how they were created, how those rules were promulgated. So although we have a good sense of how the tax department is going to provide guidelines for that, we don't have the actual guidelines today. We're looking at what they did, and we're saying income over time reduced to net present value is most likely going to be the method that the assessors will use. And that will generate a substantial taxable value. It's one of the interesting parts of this decision, that there is a substantial tax value in these solar developments. By opting out, the town puts itself in a position to be able to address that with taxation, as opposed to some of the other mechanisms that we've talked about, pilot agreements, host community benefit agreements, etc. So I wish I could be clearer, but really, until the state repromulgates its rules, we won't know for sure.
If I could add, what we do know is that their first stab at their assessment formula for a $350 million project, they were looking at about a $95 million assessment according to the state's formula. But that, again, that formula is back in court, so we really don't know where that's going to lead.
So then, just to clarify, because I'm a product of the New York State high school education system, is that their base plate, what they say that this thing can produce is here. Actuals is down around 21%. Actually, the average is between 17 and 30% because solar is intermittent. Okay, so if you tax them on what they can, what they're advertising, that obviously would generate more revenue than if you tax them on what they actually produce. Right? I mean, that's sort
Yeah,
of.
and I don't disagree. If we had the ability to write the formula, we would be taking all that into consideration, but the state is going to create the formula and tell us what the assessment is.
That's also just to clarify what I was
Exactly.
mentioning earlier, because I know it's held up in court right now, but you won't have control actually over assessing that property. That is the state's, and you have to take that into consideration.
If we don't opt out.
If you, okay.
But they're still going to set the assessment. We would just be able to apply full value assessment as opposed to going through the pilot system. It would be taxed at the total value that the state sets will be taxed at the same rate your house.
And it'll
Full
be-
assessment on whatever the assessment is.
So the land no longer is agricultural land, correct? It now becomes like industrial or what, commercial or whatever.
The land will continue to pay the base tax that it pays now as land for land. And then the improvements are what we're talking about above and beyond that. So the current land tax will remain. So now we're talking about these new improvements that we're going to get assessed to the state.
Will, Cindy Landy, County Route 21, will you be privy to that formula
Eventually,
eventually? Can you tell me, is that, I've been reading about the installed nameplate is what the developer will tell people how much energy they'll get. But that's not what we tend to, we would want the estimated capacity factor. And that's one of those, that's a formula that they know, from what I've read, other places who've done these projects, and they're not willing to share it.
I don't know, it's a 240 megawatt project, and that's what the state and national grid is expecting them to put it on to their line. 240 megawatts. That's the capacity of the plant. That's what they're applying for. That's the nucleus of what all this is about, that 240 megawatts.
But it won't produce 240.
I'm gonna ask.
So
the-
yeah, I mean, I don't want to get this into a back and forth. I just wanted to provide some clarity on that one point.
I guess,
I just would question that if this is an improvement. That's all, when you're losing a lot of what is touted again, the benefits of Canton, the rural community.
Just to expand on what Paula was saying in the statement that I came and wanted to share, is that, and I'm Rainbow again, thank you. I'm concerned that New York State, the climate initiatives, the new climate initiatives have created a situation in which local communities are losing control. I think we're all probably in agreement about that. And I just want to say out loud that I support this new law to opt out of the exemption from taxation for certain energy systems if it helps us as a community to shape our future and our economy, maintain our character and our sense of place, which I think that we work really hard to create, especially up here in the North Country. As a business owner, I feel like I participate in that in particular, creating a place that people want to come to, visit, and live in. And one that protects our natural resources as well. So I wish to encourage also our local government and our community to get more involved in helping to expand the definition of what we mean by community solar and what we mean by corporate solar beyond the size of the project only. I feel that that's an insufficient definition. And I'd be willing to participate in the process of working on that. Thank you for all the work that you guys are doing, for being here listening to us, and to everybody for showing up today.
Mary Ann, can I make a clarification?
absolutely.
So the term community solar is derived from who can access the power. So today, you can go to a website, energysage.org, and you can elect to buy the power generated from community solar systems, wherever they may be. And you can, by signing up for community solar, pay 10% less for your power supply than what you get from the utility. Community solar is a program created for people who can buy solar power no matter what their circumstance may be. As long as you have a power bill, you can participate in community solar. The other term that I use is utility scale solar, which is power that goes into the grid and is then sent elsewhere. So in Canton, we have 2 of these types of systems. We have 7 community solar systems, and we have 1 utility scale system. So we actually have both, and anyone in Canton can buy community solar power at a discount based on today's rates and tariffs.
And if I may add, community solar is is limited to 5 megawatts of power or less. That's a state defined, and, you know, there's different processes for 5 meg or less and 5 meg or more. So that's a line that was established by the state, and there's a lot of things that happen because of that line at 5 meg. So that's where those terms come from. Those aren't our terms that we make up.
That's helpful. Thank you. I did ask the question at last night's meeting and I was told that size was the determining factor. So I was going on that. I also, I guess, then take issue with maybe the appropriation of the word community. I feel pretty strongly about building community. And I think that perhaps that word's being misused by the powers that be then. And if there was an opportunity for us to reappropriate that word and define it in a way, and maybe we'd have to use a different word if the state is already using the word community solar. But I found that word misleading, I guess. And it led me to question the difference between community solar and commercial solar, because what I see is large corporations or mid-sized corporations from out of the area coming to create solar arrays of varying sizes from, 5 megawatts and less to what we're talking about being corporate solar, 240 megawatts. And it seems to me that that's all actually corporate solar.
Well, both are, you're right, both are commercial solar.
Yeah.
Both are commercial. One is of a community scale, the other one is of utility scale.
I'm understanding that a little better after the definition today, so thank you very much.
So I guess my question would be, if we are going to opt out and you're either going to tax or do the host community agreement, work that out. Now, when EDF files, does this hold it up until you guys reach an agreement with them? Or can they just say, we're gonna do what we're gonna do?
Bill, would you like to respond to that?
There will be negotiations with EDF. And this decision to opt out will, in my view, be helpful in those negotiations. Because that solar project will be there long after a 15-year exemption is gone. And strategically, this decision by the board to opt out will be of substantial assistance in negotiations going forward. It's another reason for the board to consider it.
Any more comments?
I'm sorry.
Don't
I'm
apologize.
not sure if I'm getting something, is that, we're talking publicly about opting in or opting out of something. And I think that everybody here would be very understanding if every one of you said, hey, you know what? We sort of feel the same way you guys do. This is sort of being put upon us and we feel like we really have no choice. And nothing can be more discouraging than that when someone's trying to jam something down your damn neck. I'm going to tell you, for me, as a vet, I did a little over 20 years to supposedly protect freedoms and rights and all this stuff. The fact that you guys, I've asked like 3 times now at different meetings, are you for it or are you against it? I mean, and I'm a big boy, I can take it. If you say, Clark, you know what, we're on board with this, and now we're going to try to see if we can barter the best deal possible. Fair enough. You're not getting crap from me, man. But on the same hand, maybe there's enough people here that can help you out with bartering by doing research, without looking up panels and how they get used, different ways to do it. Because it's sort of silly that we get up here and we try to do a little battle as far as who knows what about solar, who doesn't know what about solar. You guys have been on board with this or known about its existence much longer than the rest of us. But it would be nice to know, are you in or are you out on this? Thank you.
You probably know where I stand on it, I'm sure, but over the vacation, I was speaking with a family member, recent graduate of the EFS, the Environmental Forestry School in Syracuse, who had been an employee of a solar company that actually EDF subcontracted to a smaller company. She's no longer with that company. So I think she was freer to speak with me. And she asked if I knew about the Senate Bill 6599, which is New York State Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Because the first thing she said was, I said, well, it's really supplying energy for downstate. And she said, well, yeah, they wouldn't have allowed something like that in their area. And then she directed this bill to me, which I haven't really thoroughly looked at, but it relates to the protection of the community. And of course, she was saying, well, which community is it? Is it the community that the energy is going to, or is it going to be your community? And I guess that would be the question I would pose for us. Are we really wanting to get into generating electricity that goes elsewhere and benefit from that? Or do we want to really just focus in on our own? I guess it relates a little bit to what Rainbow was saying about community. Because it will change. You know, honestly, it was the first time I even thought like, oh yeah, maybe moving would be something I should do. So I think you should know that. I don't think it would be as attractive to come up and just be, that's what we're doing. That's what Canton said.
Any other comments?
Cindy Randy, County Route 21. I just, I'm curious if you know what happens after a pilot expires. What does the developer have to do? The developer would start paying the regular assessment? Is that correct?
I'll let Bill answer that as well.
And well, Gabe, even if they are supposed to, how willing are they to do that? I suspect that they will fight it with everything else they have. I don't know. I would like to know. Bill?
They are a taxpayer, like all of us.
Yes.
They're going to seek an adjustment of their taxes, just like everybody else does, in order to make sure that the assessment is fair and reasonable. They have rights, and they join together with the landowner, who also has rights. So I think we would expect, after the 15 years of tax exemptions have passed, and they're actually paying taxes, that they will seek to alter their assessments just like everybody else does. So that's what I would expect. I would expect that if they're in a situation where they're taxable in day one, then we will have conversation and perhaps more on whether it's assessed properly. This, as we spoke a few minutes ago, the assessment model that the state has developed is intended to help all of the local assessors arrive at the proper assessments for these kinds of systems. So I think I can pretty well assure you that local assessors are going to lean on those models and use them to the best of their ability to try to make fair and reasonable assessments of these new energy facilities, whether it's on day one or on after year 15.
The other thing they can do, if they want, or if they're capable of, is at the end of the 15-year pilot, they may try to retool, upgrade, whatever, to a degree where they'll turn around and seek a new one. So that's
And
an
seek the pilot.
seek a new pilot,
A new pilot.
which that is an option.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yes,
I'm more a visual person, so I wish there were my board here because I'm trying to understand really clearly what each of these options look like and what the impacts and decisions are following. So I don't know if Bill can just describe that. I appreciate your clarity tonight is very appreciated, but if you can just talk about those steps, if we opt in or opt out with the upcoming projects, what does that, what does decision A versus decision B look like in terms of pilots, potential taxation, what happens in 15 years, what community benefit agreement happens or does not, what control the community, the board have, the state has over us, you know, and it's a lot of things, but if there's anything you can do to kind of verbally illustrate those, what really those two options mean, the implications and the risks.
I'll try. So if the board determines to opt out, then any new facility that comes to Canton would be fully taxable once it's interconnected. I mentioned 7 community solar projects, the 5 megawatt projects. To the best of our knowledge, all of those projects are interconnected. So this would not affect those 7 projects. Rich Road, larger project, is to the best of our knowledge, and we don't have a complete picture on Ridge Road. They are not interconnected. It's our understanding. So if the board opts out, then it would be in a position to tax from day one new facilities, the ones that are already here and are already interconnected, moving ahead. We would be looking for pilot agreements and host community benefit agreements. And the combination of those two, we would hope, would deliver full tax, the equivalent of full tax to the town. That is the goal, if you will, is to deliver as much tax revenue from these facilities as is possible under the law. So opting out provides the town with yet another tool to use to try to generate revenues for the town because of this development. So I think I would look at it this way. We have the burdens of hosting these facilities, trying to maximize the benefits. Those benefits are largely in dollars and cents.
If I could add one thing, this isn't the first time 487 has been before the town board. We actually had a public hearing probably a year or so ago at least, where we considered this. But at the time, residential solar was still happening at a pace that we did not want to discourage. And as you all know, we had a Solarized Canton campaign over the last 10 years. There's 90 residential systems in place in Canton, and I think we should all be proud of that. We have community solar development happening, hopefully being situated in good situations. But opting out is a tool in our toolbox. We're getting a clearer picture of what this Rich Road project is looking like and what all of this solar activity is looking like for the town. And residential has died off considerably because of community solar. In the last year, we've had 3 residential systems go in. That's a snail's pace compared to what was happening before. All because I think community solar is available now where you can do this through your bill without having to add the infrastructure out of your pocket to your property. With that said, Rich Road is a serious enough situation that it deserves this discussion again and a chance for the board to revisit it. Is it time now to use that tool in our toolbox?
I gotta say something about, so just something to consider when you say the pace is slowed down, is that also as people get more educated, because I've been just panels before too myself in personal projects, and I've seen them around town. Matter of fact, when we started getting our snow a week and a half ago, I started watching them just to see how long they were gonna, before they would self-clean. The snow was on there for 5 or 6 days. They don't work with snow on. Okay, but I want to just share something with you. Okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I will just share this with you. EDF, and this isn't a slam against them, but they don't care about us. Just remember that when you're negotiating with it. Here's one of their pamphlets with all who they're going to be working with on this project. Guess who's not on there? King. I can read them all to you. There's 9 of them. But I'll just stop in the last couple, St. Lawrence County, St. Lawrence County, St. Lawrence County, New York State. Can't be done on, but it's going here.
Well aware.
So if you think they care about us, just remember that when you're negotiating, who's ever gonna do that. Because they don't.
Well aware.
Thank you.
One other question. At one,
Paula, can you stand up? Because
yeah, at one point I saw it listed as the Ridge Road Energy Center under one advertisement that had contributed to Grassroots Heritage Foundation, which sent your things up. But, and then this is called the Ridge Road Energy Project. So is it really a done deal and it is an energy center already established? Or is it a project, a proposed project?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jim, go ahead, finish your.
Lynn Soulier, 6216 County Rock 27. I guess my own question is, and this is probably just, I don't know. Other communities that have these big projects like this, have they opted out? Or have they stayed? I mean, I guess I'm just wondering. If
It's a mixed bag.
What's that?
It's a mixed bag. There's a website that you can go to that tells you every tax and jurisdiction that either, there's no opting in. You're in unless you opt out. So that should get cleared up. You're only opting out unless you opt out and then want to opt back in. But there is a website that you can go to that lists every tax and jurisdiction in New York State and whether they are in or they have chosen to opt out.
Have you guys talked
So
with
if
any
I,
of these guys
if I,
at all?
if I may,
Okay.
I did a little research on this. Since 1990, 500, that's 499, it's actually the number, 499 municipalities, which includes counties, towns, villages, cities, and schools. And interestingly, 263 towns and 211 schools have opted out of this. And only 6 have rescinded that option. So they've stayed out of it. So it's a pretty considerable number. And most of that happened from 2012 through today. And I'm assuming that's probably because of technology development. So,
With that said, I also cross-read. This has turned into a full-time job, so you folks should know. So I peeled back every layer on this as many times as you can think. So I've cross-referenced those towns and communities that have opted out with where there's actual utility scale solar projects going on in the state, and it hasn't been returned. There are communities that have opted out that have similar size projects going in. Those communities now are just better situated from a negotiating standpoint, but I don't see anywhere that it's actually killing this project. And all that information is online. I mean, I researched at home just like everybody else can and really should. So
Is there any other facility at all within our state that is 2.6 square miles that I would love to drive to?
There
and
are.
see?
there's 500 megawatt projects in the state, twice as big.
And where, do you know where?
Western New York. I mean, if you go to the ORES website, you can look at what's in pre-application, what's in application, and what has been approved. And you can see the scale and detail in every document they generated by those projects. So if you want to see how this is going, all the information is online to.
Well, it just would be good to get a visual.
Yeah.
Sorry
There
to-
are. There's anywhere from 100 megawatt up to 500 megawatt. So
I think there's 22. Projects.
pre-approved by the state.
Sir?
My name's David Duff. I live in Macomb. I don't live in your community here. I spend some time here. I've been involved with the wind industry, which deals with local communities, similar, I think, to how the solar folks are dealing with it. It's the David and Goliath situation. And there's so many moving parts and so many less than distinct answers to your questions. As a host community, what have you people negotiated? Have you negotiated anything, or is that to happen after you say, we're going to stay in? Because if you don't have those things ready to tell us, how are we to say to you, yes, we support this, or no, we don't support this? I think this project is profoundly out of proportion for this community. The things that draw people to this community, frankly, where the old entrance to St. Lawrence University used to be, was there because that's where people came when they got off of the train to come to the university. Now, Route 11 is how we get here. We have the natural environment here in spades that people want to come and be part of. This project is of a size that needs to be situated where that power is going to go. That power isn't going to stay here. That's one in downstate. The reason they're here is because the land is cheap, because the ag community is in disarray, and because we're looking around for some money. They aren't just going to rent this land for 15 years and then give it back to us like it looks now. That isn't going to happen. With the wind people, once the project's up and running, it gets sold. And now the people that you dealt with when you were the host community, they're gone. There's somebody else here. If you look at Lowville and what happens there with the wind folks, we want to expand. We want to put another 50 over here. There's no saying that wouldn't happen here too. So you got the camel's nose under the tent. Be very careful. If you can, as I said, it's David and Goliath. Anything you can do to try and control the situation for the local community is in your best interest, because the state doesn't care.
That's why we're here tonight.
The state has set this up. That's why if you want to deny a pilot to these folks, you got to deny subsidies to everybody else. It's a little guy, big guy. Thanks for doing this. And it's thankless what you're doing, but it's necessary. Thank you very much.
Barb Rogers, Viner Street Road. Just another question, and it's about, well, I should say, I'd like to be on the record in favor of opting out and making all solar arrays taxable. My question though is about a battery bank. I know some people with domestic solar arrays do have batteries, and there is a certain amount of additional risk that comes with batteries. And with industrial sized battery banks, I would think that the risk is considerably higher. Would the taxation also be commensurate with the risk, or is it just too early to tell? And I appreciate any response. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Bill, do you want to answer that? Address that?
It's a very good question. Because the assessment model is based on revenue, and a battery, there will be a battery associated with the Rich Road project. My understanding of the reasoning behind the battery is that energy sales have peak demand and off-peak demand. So there's a demand factor that goes into how much revenue you get for every bit of electricity that you put into the grid. So the battery allows you to store energy when you're making it during the daytime, and then to sell it when it's most advantageous to create more revenue. So to the extent that the taxes are based on a revenue model, then I think the answer would be a battery provides an additional revenue. I think the reason that they are putting batteries into these systems is the intermittent nature of solar energy. Only happens during the daytime, but people still consume energy at night. And there's a price differential between when it's generated and when it's used. So I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but that's the understanding that I have about why they're doing what they're doing and the financial reasons behind it. Maximize revenue.
In addition, my question also goes further than just the risk of batteries, but we need to train our fire department to respond to battery fires. We need, as a community, to be prepared to respond to an industrial battery bank, which would cost a lot more to every taxpayer in our town, which seems to me, it makes perfect sense that that would in itself become a taxable event. And I'm just not so much asking for answers and is kind of putting the bug out there to consider these additional expenses and considering them when assessing projects that have higher risks that require specialized training to accommodate. Thank you.
I had something on that because last time when we were here, the battery issue came up and I told you guys that I had talked with Jack Hunter, their rep down there. And he said that the battery bank issue isn't necessarily a done deal. That's just on their initial proposal, but they may not do that at all.
Okay. I'll entertain one or two more questions or comments.
I apologize. My name is Pam Rose. I'm Key Road, Canton. I don't know much about pilot. I'm just learning about pilots, so I appreciate all that you guys are doing and always hope that everything that's done is done for the benefit of our community. I would like to understand why we would even do pilot from what I'm hearing tonight. And if we do pilots and for community benefits when there are solar projects, whether they're small or large, why are they not part of the decision making instead of active effect? And then so you do a 15-year pilot as well, 20, 25 years, whatever the life of the pilot or the solar farm is. What happens when the landowner and the developer make all their money and just walk away? Where does that tax burden go then? I really don't feel that Canton is going to be overrun with solar. Canton is going to be overrun with solar. It's my biggest fear. I worry about our farmlands. I worry about our children. I worry about our future. And whether dank or the solid waste can even handle all that's going to be coming through. They're all happening now. So 20 to 30 years, whatever the life of those is, they probably will walk away. And then we're going to have all these brown fields. And then it won't matter if we have a pilot or whatever we have. And maybe I'm wrong, and I would love to be enlightened on that because these are huge concerns for our community. Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Jim Rose, Mead Road, Canton. Probably gonna be all over the place because I didn't bring any notes. I think I was gonna speak tonight. As most of you know, we've, my wife and I have ate, drank, and slept in solar for 2.5 years. Last night we lost the first round. We won't stop yet. We've learned a lot. Just recently found out the difference between community solar and commercial solar, and it's obvious why these companies are all coming in here and staying at 5 megawatts to stay on the tax breaks, which kind of bothers me because I got $9 million solar project going in behind us, evaluating our property, and they get tax breaks. It's a little hard to swallow. You know, we were getting back up. I'm not against solar by any means. It does bother me that we're losing all this farmland. I started my career as a farmer, you know, helping all the local farmers. Worked my butt off. I know how hard they work, the hours they put in. We wouldn't have food if it wasn't for them. So it just bothers me that, you know, Canton's losing all those thousands of acres. Solar, farming gone. People realize, I guess, after the fact, when they have to import the beef and the vegetables. Off track. But I want to thank the board. I mean, you guys have done a ton of work getting the solar law in place. What I've learned, there's probably some tweaking that needs to be done to it. That's why you're here tonight. It's a learning curve. It's a tsunami coming at you. I thank everybody for all the work they're doing. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Eric, I have a point of order question. Close public hearing and then we'll go to the secret. Or, I'm sorry.
Close the public hearing.
Right.
Doesn't really matter the order, but probably the easiest way to do it is to, if you want to opt out, do a motion second for discussion. Analysis. That's complete.
So I'm going to close the public hearing. We appreciate everything that you have commented on and your questions and your involvement in your civic being here is very much appreciated. So I need a motion to close the public hearing. Second.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carry.
Make a motion.
Usually there's 4 seconds.
I know, I was waiting.
I'd like to make a motion to opt out of tax law 487 pending secret review.
We have a motion and a second.
By opting out, of course, you adopt the local laws.
Right, adopting the local law as drafted to opt out of 487 pending the secret review.
Second.
Second, yeah.
Okay, further discussion.
Want to go through the secret now, part of the discussion?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, okay.
That would be the next step.
So if you could define what the secret is for everybody, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so whenever the State Environmental Quality Review Act, commonly referred to as SEQRS, is what we're talking about. The idea is that when you take certain action as a board, you're supposed to consider the environmental consequences of the action. The regulations issued by the Department of Environmental Conservation. It's commonly referred to as the seeker analysis. Now, there really is some question about whether, because this is a taxing issue, as opposed to whether or not a facility is being built. There's some real question about whether the seeker analysis is really even necessary for this. But in an abundance of caution, we thought it made sense to go through the seeker analysis so that this board can be on the sides for taking action. We work with the folks at Barton and the Judas John and the other particulars. Prepared and emailed out draft and assessment. This didn't fit neatly into any of the specific types of actions found in the action for secret purposes. So we thought it made the most sense to address it like this action. Short form environmental
assessment. It probably makes some sense just. Well, that being said, part one, the environmental assessment has a notation that describes the project, which is the opting out pursuant to section 487 of the real property tax law. It was attached to the part one, a copy of the law along with the notice, which is required by virtue of the regulations that govern seeker. The first question is really, does the proposed action only involve the legislative adoption of the plan, local law, ordinance, administrative law regulation? And if the answer is yes, which I believe in this case it is, we just proceed and complete the final bit of Form 1, which doesn't involve the various environmental questions. We just indicate that it's a legislative action by this body and we move forward with part 2.
I'm sorry, Eric. I just wanted to make sure Jim had this copy. So the answer was yes to that.
Yes. How it could be anything other than legislative action. I think we agree with that. We're final with part 1 and with part 2.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're going to certify that's the case on page 3 part of the assessment. So the next step, if there was any other involved agencies, we would need to initiate a coordinated review pursuant to the secret regulations. This is not something that requires the input of other agencies. This is a tax initiative. The statute delegates to this board, the state statute delegates to this board. So I think at this point, coordinated review is unnecessary, and this board can go through the list of questions that are that make up part 2 of the short form environmental assessment. All right. And if you'd like, I can just go through those questions briefly. The first is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with adopted land use or zoning regulations? Always the appropriate answer to that. Is there any disagreement with that? No, so no disagreement.
No disagreement.
Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? I think again, no, this is simply a legislative action regarding real property tax regulations. Section of question 3. So again, no, we agree that correct. That's no. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Again, I would say no, it's a simple legislative action. Is there any disagreement with that? Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristic that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? Again, we agree the answer is no. Will the proposed action result in adverse change in existing level of traffic or affecting the infrastructure of mass transit, bike, or walkway? Is there any disagreement? Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy? If it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable opportunities? Again, I would say the answer is no. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies or public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Absolutely relevant to those. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? That's a tax statute and there. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to a natural resource, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, fauna? and opposed no. Is there any dispute over that? Will the proposed action result in an increase in potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Tax statute, I don't think it's going to impact that. So if we say no. And finally, will the proposed action create a hazard to the environment, resources, or? We know it's sufficient. Yes. Well, and that, that being the case, I think the last thing to do is for the board to make a determination of environmental significance. And given the no to all of the questions, short environmental assessment, impact assessment, it's the board can make a determination. There's no environmental significance in the negative declaration. So, is there? Yes. That's it. I think you're authorized then to make a determination that they're based on a supported documentation. Part 1 and part 2, if there is no significant adverse environmental impact as a result of the documents project and design. Part 3 of the environmental assessment. Does it require a recommendation of negative impact? It wouldn't hurt to have that. Just to make a motion. Well, we've already got a motion. Take that motion.
Want to withdraw?
Should we do the negative impact first? Before adopting the resolution, I think it would be.
Withdraw the motion.
Okay, so I make a motion that town boards determines negative impact to our optimal regard to the secret.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carry.
And I'll make a motion.
Wait a minute. So I sign this,
Part 3
as
is
a result of that
determination
vote.
of significance. And just so we're clear, I think the language of the motion should contain language that it was a negative declaration with respect to adverse environmental impact.
you got that. Okay, so is there a motion?
Motion to adopt the local law opting out of 487.
Second by Bob Sandler. Any further discussion or questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carry. So these forms will back to John.
Those we should put. And we need to file. And in addition, it's got to be filed. I can see her tomorrow. I'll stop.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna hand this over to Heidi. And just make sure.
Who was the second? Who was the second?
I'm sorry,
Who was the second on the motion?
Bob Sandler.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your work, Eric and Bill, appreciate it. It is a tsunami. It is. So, all right, we have one more item on the agenda, and we need to approve the agreement between the town of Canton and the CSCA Local 1000 unit, our highway unit. Took a while to negotiate a contract, but we're finally there. We do have signed contracts from the unit. So I need a motion to approve this agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye, aye.
Doesn't require a roll call.
All right,
And everybody's gonna sign it.
no, just you and I. So you're gonna, here you go.
Why,
There you go.
why just? why-
That's what we've done.
Why
Last one
should,
too.
why should we give the opportunity to sign?
Yeah, they can do the next one.
This is very. I feel-
I'm sorry? We're still going. We're still going. The meeting's still going. So let
What
me
is
know.
it, over agreement?
Jim, you got,
It's a-
here. Gotta sign that one too.
You gotta send that to us.
There's three you have to sign, Jim. Here's the third one. Okay. This is the highway contract. This is the highway contract. January 1, 22 to December 31st of 2025. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, there you go. All right.
We'll stay.